Hello community, John here again. It's a little follow-up video to my last one. So spinning, I'm listening to this. This is Jorge Zamfir. It's a soundtrack to a movie called Picnic at Hanging Rock. Australian movie, I think made in the 70s sometime. 76, I think it was. This was released. But anyway, soundtrack to that movie, really good. Panpipes. I'm not a particular fan of panpipes in general, but just this soundtrack is very nice because it's very atmospheric, very much like the movie. If you ever see that, can't recommend it enough. Very good. So, I was quite interested to see in Derek Higgins, one of his most recent videos, I think he posted the other day, he mentioned, I think he had a CD by Rishi Sakamoto and David Sylvian, and it kind of coincided because some of the material that I've got as part of my reunited series of records that I've sort of reacquired back from places where they were left, and in this case records that I'd had in storage in my parents' loft since I left home a long time ago now. Anyway, amongst that lot was some Rishi Sakamoto records, and I always think this is such a shame that David Sylvian doesn't really get much of a look in the VC. For some reason people aren't that interested in him, or they don't seem to be anyway. And this guy, Rishi Sakamoto, he's worked a lot with David Sylvian. They've done sort of albums together and soundtracks and things like that. This is Rishi Sakamoto's first album. Hard to really kind of explain how this sounds. I mean, he's Japanese and it's sort of very, ethnically Japanese, I guess. Although, albeit with a pop bent of the time. This has come out in the latter part of the 70s, and this is his first album, I think, first studio album. His next one is his third album. This was released in 1980, I think. It's called B2 Units. Yeah, again, it's hard to kind of describe how they sound, but his latter stuff is kind of typified. Here we go. This is the soundtrack to a movie featuring David Bowie, one of the lead characters, called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And Rishi Sakamoto is responsible for the soundtrack to this movie. There's a particularly really cool track called Forbidden Cudders, which he made, and I think he did it together with David Sylvian. That's on that one. Another record in that batch of ones that I got from my parents' loft was this record. Now I've had this for years. This is Debbie Harry. It's her first solo outing. And when I got this, I didn't really kind of think much of it. I got this in the early 80s, I think, and yeah, 81 it came out, so I was just kind of put off by the fact that it didn't really sound like Blondie, which is what I wanted it to sound like, and so I didn't really kind of give it much attention at the time. But picking up now and listening to it, yeah, it's easy to kind of be a bit dismissive of it as well in the same way. But I probably last listened to this, yeah, in the mid-80s, I guess. Listening to it now, it's interesting to see that it's produced by Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards from Chic. I know them because they had a large influence over Duran Duran, who I'm sort of quite big fans of. And reading up about this album, you hear that, or you see that in many ways it was the first of a series of records that is typified by their production. Amongst the ones that this is kind of grouped together with is, for instance, the Power Station album, and David Bowie's Let's Dance album, for instance, Robert Palmer's Riptide album, I think one or two others, that I'll list them here. That this is sort of kind of put together in a group in terms of this particular sort of production style, and re-listening to this album with that understanding, with those ideas in my head, you know, you get a whole new, different appreciation of this record. All of a sudden it sounds much, much better and makes much more sense to me than what it did before. Before it just felt like, it doesn't really sound like Blondie, I'm not really interested. Now I can hear it with, you know, with a different understanding and enjoy it that much more. Okay. So, part of my New Year's resolution has gone quite well. You know, I've been listening to records and only doing that, taking time out from doing anything else, shutting everything else off, and just enjoying records for the sake of enjoying the music without being disturbed. The first one of those, I will say, is this album. I've shown this before, I think, in videos. This is a band called England. They're a progressive rock band. I bought this brand new last year, and I don't buy many brand new records. It's on red vinyl. This is really quite fun because it sits so cleverly between the sound of Yes and the sound of sort of classic Genesis. You've got the pastoral moments from Genesis, you've got the complexity of Yes, quite long songs, yeah, 2 songs here over 12 minutes long, one's actually 16 minutes long, complex arrangements, beautiful record, really enjoyed it. You don't hear much about it, but it's really good, and they only made this album, and they made it in '77, which of course was sort of the end of the classic progressive rock movement, I guess. So had they been around a little bit earlier, they would probably have been a much bigger name than what they actually are. Another album which I've listened to quite nicely, quite closely to, is a new one which I've got on CD. The last video I showed this album, which I got for Christmas. I really liked it, so I thought, well, check out some more of their stuff. And a bit of a leap of faith, I guess, because I mean, you hear many different comments from different people, and some of the ones I've heard is like that record is probably the best, and everything else after wasn't so good. Other people say differently, but I thought, well, I'll minimise the risk. I'll buy the next album on CD, a used CD. So I picked this album up for about £2 off Amazon, arrived the next day. This is a soundtrack that they made. Called The Virgin Suicides, and not often that I get an album and listen to it once the first time and just instantly like it. This is one of those. This was so good, really, really good, straight away, and I've listened to it many times. An advantage of it being on CD is that I can listen to it in bed. When I go to bed at night, I put my headphones on and listen to this. Really, really nice, and yeah, I'm not distracted at all. Actually, it's really, really nice to listen to. Been playing it constantly. It sounds a lot, and there's a lot of similarities between that and this album. This is Jan Hammer, First 7 Days. This was his first album, I think, that he released after leaving the Mahavishnu Orchestra. And I've always liked this record, but when I heard this, I could hear a link. I don't know if it's intentional, because I mean they're both, yeah, technically they're instrumental, both sort of keyboard music. This came a lot earlier, obviously, but I can hear a lot of elements of this in that CD. So some other records that I've spent time actually listening to intently. Last night I listened to this. This is Sugarloaf. It's the only record of theirs I have. I've got no idea where it falls in their catalogue, but this is an album that I picked up in the US when I lived there, and I liked it straight away. A lot of sunlight in here right now, so I don't know how well that's showing. There's a lot of glare on it. Yeah, as you can see, the record's seen better days. It's mildly sort of beat up, but just well used. The surface of the record is such that it plays fine. It's on Liberty label, but there's enough sort of these, you know, hairline scratches on it to make it a little bit sort of disturbing. So I actually listened to it, although I listened to it all the way through without doing anything else. I listened to it in the other room so as not to be kind of distracted by the poor reproduction. I could do with a new copy of this actually. I should look out for that. Well, it was an interesting, I'd forgotten, I hadn't listened to this for a couple of years, or yeah, a couple of years I suppose. And the second track is a cover version of The Train Kept A Rolling, which I think was by the Yardbirds. Interesting to listen to that. Another album which I've listened to all the way through and enjoyed very much was this. This is Frankie Miller. Now on Steve Flipside's channel, one of his recent videos, he spoke about Frankie Miller, and I recognised the name when he mentioned it, and I thought, well, I know I've got a record by that artist, and I'm sure, yeah, that's what I've got. This is a compilation, and when I acquired this, I wasn't familiar with the name, and I didn't quite know where to sort of pigeonhole them, if you like, but I knew that I would most probably need to come back to this sometime, so I kept it, and I'm really glad that I did. Steve said, you know, give this guy a listen, he's actually very good, and he is, he's really good. And I spent a little bit of time looking up his history, and in the information you read, occasionally the sort of reference to Rod Stewart pops up, which I found quite interesting. I wouldn't say he sounds like Rod Stewart. He doesn't. He's certainly got his own thing, because this guy's a vocalist at the end of the day, a singer. I don't know if he actually writes the music that he performs. He may have a hand in it, but I don't think that's his main thing. The main thing is his vocals and his delivery. He has this very sort of earthy tone, sort of blues soul that he sort of does. And yeah, I can see how he might fit in the same field somewhere as Rod Stewart. Also Paul Rodgers comes to mind. He's got very sort of essence of Paul Rodgers style vocals, and also the guy Joe Cocker, the young Joe Cocker. I would put those guys together in a sort of similar area, if you like, and the music is in that ballpark too. It's sort of very sort of earthy, bluesy soul type stuff. Really glad I kept hold of this. Thanks for the heads up, Steve. On the back of this compilation there's a list of his other earlier albums, so look out for those when I can. And then the last album which I'm going to show is this one. This is Alice Cooper's Killer album. Haven't listened to that for a long time. This was interesting. I enjoyed this. I always think I should listen to more Alice Cooper than I actually do. And yeah, I'm going to fold out this thing. It's got the calendar in there. What I thought was interesting about this was the third track, Halo of Flies, on side 1. There's a mid-section in there where it almost sounds like the rhythm is like on repeat, and it sounds like it's stuck. And when I sort of listened closely to this yesterday, I thought, wow, that sounds like the record's stuck. But then the melody kind of continues over. I think it's a guitar solo goes over it. I've never noticed that before. Amazing things you hear when you really kind of do spend time actually sitting down and listening to the music. Okay, that's my lot for today. The next video I think I'm going to make is going to be centered around heavy metal. I've got a lot of heavy metal records and I don't really show many of them. I don't really listen to much heavy metal these days. I used to, so I've got a fair amount. And I've got one or two, you know, one's obscurities, if you like, that might be interesting to see. So I'll do a heavy metal video next time. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time. Bye.